There's something quietly powerful about being ordinary. It's not what anyone tells you, but maybe that's why it matters. The average person isn't loud or remarkable, yet they hold the rhythm of the world together. The paradox is that the ordinary keeps everything running while being invisible to itself. We overlook it because we confuse noise with meaning. But what if the mystery isn't in greatness at all, but in the quiet endurance of the average life? The person who shows up every day, keeps promises no one thanks them for, and carries the hidden structure of society without realizing it. Maybe mediocrity isn't weakness. Maybe it's camouflage for something sacred. Nietzsche once noticed this uncomfortable truth. He saw how the majority always wins, not through strength, but through agreement. He wrote about the herd, about the soft pressure of collective comfort that shapes even the strongest minds. What disturbed him wasn't stupidity. It was the silent power of sameness. The way people trade their individuality for belonging, their edge for approval. Nietzsche didn't hate mediocrity. He feared what it did to the soul, the way it lulled the creative spirit into sleep while convincing it that everything was fine. And perhaps he was right. The danger isn't in the average person. It's in how the average becomes the ruler of all minds. Excellence, in contrast, has always been dangerous. It threatens what people find comfortable. The genius unsettles the order of things simply by existing, by refusing to flatten themselves to fit the crowd. And so, societies don't hate brilliance outright, they isolate it. They turn it into a myth, something to admire from afar, not to emulate. Being exceptional is lonely because the world protects its equilibrium. The extraordinary reminds everyone else of what they've surrendered. And deep down, that creates quiet resentment. People want beauty, but they don't want the discomfort it demands. They want light without heat. It's almost like a law of nature, an invisible gravity pulling everything towards sameness. Try to rise too far above, and that gravity tugs at your ankles. It's subtle, a joke from a friend, a strange look in a meeting, the sinking realization that being different costs something. Most people don't even notice the pull. They call it balance or harmony. But sameness has momentum, like a river's current. It wears down sharp edges until the stones are smooth and forget they were once jagged. And maybe that's what society is, a quiet current shaping us, not through force, but through endless, gentle erosion. Standing out feels risky because it is. We're wired to belong. The tribe once meant survival. That instinct never left us. Every time you express a thought that doesn't fit, you feel that ancient fear of exile flicker in your chest. The mind whispers, stay quiet. Don't be strange. And yet, that's where the real self hides, behind what you hesitate to say. The fear of standing out isn't weakness. It's proof you still care about connection. But the paradox is, the more you shrink to fit in, the lonelier you become. Comfort makes this easier. It's the modern luxury we mistake for peace. But comfort is clever. It doesn't destroy you outright. It dissolves you slowly. It tells you you've earned rest, even when you haven't yet lived fully. It gives you endless entertainment, so you never notice your hunger for meaning fading. The danger of comfort isn't that it feels good. It's that it makes you forget you once wanted more. It makes mediocrity not just tolerable, but desirable. The soul becomes a houseplant, alive but confined, thriving under artificial light. And yet, there's something deeply human about the desire to be normal. Even the most thoughtful, the most self-aware people want to feel included. No one wants to be the strange one forever. We crave to be seen as ordinary sometimes, because ordinary means accepted. It's the soft warmth of being one of us. Even philosophers, artists, or thinkers, those who claim to reject the crowd, often secretly yearn for its quiet approval. There's tenderness in that, not hypocrisy. It's a reminder that behind every craving for greatness is a quieter wish to be loved without conditions. So maybe mediocrity isn't a curse. Maybe it's a mirror, reflecting what we fear to lose and what we quietly long for. The average person wins not because they're special, but because they understand something the exceptional forget: how to belong. The crowd always wins because it offers safety, rhythm, predictability. And perhaps Nietzsche didn't despise that. Perhaps he saw in it a truth about human nature that we still resist. The crowd survives. The individual burns out, remembered only if the crowd decides it's convenient. But what if that's not the end of the story? What if mediocrity, in its quiet triumph, hides the seed of something profound, something even Nietzsche might have misunderstood? Because when you look closely, you start to see that the average isn't the absence of greatness. It's the soil from which it grows. The quiet repetition, the unnoticed routines, the small acts of perseverance. These are not failures of ambition, but the foundation of it. The extraordinary is built on the ordinary, and the ordinary is what endures when brilliance fades. That's the strange beauty of mediocrity. It's not a flaw in the human story, but its heartbeat. And if you listen closely enough, beneath the noise of ambition and the fear of being unseen, you can almost hear it. The steady pulse of the ordinary, carrying the weight of everything remarkable that ever was. There was a time when people didn't think of themselves as individuals. They moved together, believed together, feared together. Nietzsche called this the birth of the herd, the collective instinct that keeps humanity from tearing itself apart. It wasn't born from evil, but from survival. The herd protected life. It told people what to value, how to behave, who to trust. It gave meaning to chaos. But in the same breath that it built safety, it quietly buried something rare, the individual will. The herd was a beautiful invention with a tragic cost. To belong, one had to stop being fully alive. And yet, the herd feels right. It feels moral. To follow what others believe brings relief, the soft warmth of approval. There's no conflict, no fear of exile. Conformity promises peace, and peace is addictive. When everyone nods to the same rhythm, you feel righteous, even if you've stopped thinking. The crowd rewards sameness with belonging, and belonging feels holy. You don't have to face the terror of being wrong. You just have to stay in line. That's why most people never realize how deep the pull goes. It doesn't feel like obedience. It feels like goodness. But for the thinker, the dreamer, or the quiet observer, this goodness can feel like suffocation. Nietzsche pitted them, the few who can't silence their own thoughts long enough to blend in. They wander like ghosts among the content. They see through the illusions that others need to survive. Their tragedy isn't arrogance, it's sensitivity. They feel the world too deeply to pretend it's simple. And while the herd finds comfort in certainty, the thinker lives in questions. That's their curse, clarity that isolates. They aren't rebels by choice, they're exiles by nature. They stand at the edge of the crowd, longing to belong, yet unable to unsee what they've seen. Over time, even greatness can collapse under this weight. History is full of thinkers who spoke too early, only to be ignored or mocked until it was safe to agree with them. The herd doesn't hate genius, it just can't hear it yet. It's like music played in a frequency too high for comfort. So the higher type grows silent, buried under laughter and misunderstanding. A philosopher dies alone, a poet burns out, a visionary fades into obscurity. Only when their threat is gone does the world build statues. Greatness survives, but must first be forgotten. Somewhere in this long story, something subtle shifted. Values that once celebrated strength and courage began to praise gentleness, safety, and humility. Nietzsche called this the inversion of values, the moment when the powerless rewrote the rules of virtue. What began as survival became morality. Instead of admiring those who dared, we learned to praise those who obeyed. The strong became cruel, the bold became arrogant, and comfort became good. It wasn't malice, it was strategy. The herd found a way to make its weakness sacred. And so, we build a world where the greatest sin is to stand out too much. That's how the last man was born, the figure Nietzsche saw standing at the end of history. He is satisfied, harmless, endlessly entertained. He is everything but meaning. The last man no longer dreams or suffers. He simply exists in mild comfort. He shrinks from depth because it might disturb his peace. His eyes are tired but content. He no longer worships gods or heroes, only convenience. We have invented happiness, he says, and blinks. Nietzsche didn't describe this with anger, but with mourning. The future he feared wasn't violent. It was tranquil, dull, perfectly safe. And perhaps, he whispered, that is the true danger. But even within this herd of last men, there is a flicker. A disguised genius lives within the average person. It hides beneath self-doubt, under years of conformity and noise. It's a quiet voice that wonders, is this all there is? That small unrest, that invisible resistance. It's the echo of the thinker buried inside the crowd. Mediocrity may not be the death of greatness, but its disguise. Perhaps the potential for brilliance hasn't vanished. It's just sleeping, waiting for a moment of courage to wake it. Every now and then it stirs, when someone reads an old book and feels seen, when someone pauses before doing what everyone does. The herd never truly kills individuality. It just covers it with comfort. So maybe Nietzsche's warning wasn't meant to condemn humanity, but to remind it. Perhaps mediocrity isn't the enemy. Perhaps it's the environment, the soil from which both weakness and greatness grow. We keep trying to fight the herd, to escape it, but maybe the challenge isn't to run, it's to stay awake within it, to belong without surrendering yourself. Nietzsche saw what few could, that the future wouldn't fall to tyranny or chaos, but to comfort. And yet, within that comfort, the seeds of awakening still exist. The question isn't whether the crowd always wins. It's whether the few who can still think will dare to stay alive inside it. We spend our lives chasing approval, even when we pretend not to care. It's one of the most natural addictions in the world. When someone nods at us, smiles at us, praises us, our brain releases tiny bursts of dopamine, the same chemical reward that drives desire. We crave it because it feels like proof we exist, that we matter. Approval is the social mirror that tells us we're not invisible. But the problem is that once we taste it, we start to need it. Every gesture becomes a quiet question. Do they like me? Do they see me? What began as connection slowly becomes dependence. The fear of losing approval traps us in the gravity of the average. We stop thinking freely, not out of laziness, but because it's safer to echo than to stand alone. Yet standing alone is exactly what the exceptional often face. They move through the world like a different frequency, heard but rarely understood. Their loneliness doesn't come from arrogance, but from misalignment. They see details others overlook, feel emotions others ignore, and ask questions others avoid. And that difference isolates them. It's not that they don't want to belong, they just can't unsee what they've seen. To be exceptional is to live in translation, always explaining, always softening your edges for others to accept you. Over time, that becomes exhausting. So they retreat into silence, mistaking solitude for peace, when in truth it's simply distance from misunderstanding. To protect themselves from that exhaustion, many people hide behind mediocrity. It becomes a defense mechanism, an emotional disguise. Playing small feels safe. When you don't aim too high, you can't fall too far. When you blend in, no one expects much, and that's comforting. Mediocrity isn't just failure to strive, it's armor. It says, if I don't try, I can't be exposed. Deep down, many intelligent people know their potential frightens them. Greatness demands visibility, and visibility invites judgment. So they settle into roles that feel manageable, convincing themselves that peace matters more than purpose. But the truth is, this safety comes with a silent cost, the erosion of the self that once wanted more. We often soften that truth by telling ourselves that everyone has equal potential. It's a kind lie, born from kindness but maintained by denial. Not everyone can write symphonies, lead nations, or uncover new laws of nature. And that's okay. But pretending we're all the same dulls the spark of those who could be extraordinary. The myth of equal potential comforts the insecure while quietly suffocating the gifted. Real equality doesn't mean sameness. It means honesty. It means seeing that some are meant to climb higher, not to dominate others, but to light the way. When we deny that truth, we create a culture where ambition feels shameful and excellence feels arrogant. Nowhere is that more visible than in a modern world of constant comparison. Social media has turned life into a performance. Every scroll reminds us that someone else is younger, richer, happier, more admired. Comparison used to be local. Now it's global. We measure our worth not by who we are, but by who we aren't. This endless scoreboard leaves us restless, exhausted, and quietly resentful. The irony is that the people we envy are often doing the same thing, comparing themselves to others in a loop with no exit. We're connected to everyone and intimate with no one. We seek meaning through metrics, validation through visibility. The mind was never designed to carry this many mirrors. Eventually, that pressure drives many into a numb kind of peace. The peace of mediocrity. It's not real calm. It's a tranquilized spirit. Comfort whispers that you've made the right choice, that striving is foolish. But inside, a quiet unrest grows. You sense that you've traded aliveness for stability. Days blur into each other, safe but hollow. You tell yourself you're content, but at night, when everything is still, a faint ache reminds you that contentment isn't fulfillment. The false peace of mediocrity is seductive because it feels like rest, but it's actually retreat. It's not healing, it's hibernation. Ironically, the people most capable of greatness often sabotage themselves the most. They think too deeply, analyze every possibility until they talk themselves out of action. Their intelligence becomes a trap. They see every angle, every risk, every potential failure, so they hesitate. They overprepare, overthink, overfeel, and the world moves on without them. This self-sabotage doesn't come from laziness. It comes from fear disguised as logic. Smart people build elaborate excuses to protect their ego from disappointment. But the longer they wait, the heavier their potential becomes. Eventually, they stop dreaming not because they no longer care, but because caring hurts too much. And so, the average mind isn't just a social product. It's a psychological strategy. It protects us from pain, from rejection, from the unbearable weight of possibility. But if mediocrity is protection, then what would destroy it? What could awaken the dormant energy inside those who once dreamed bigger? That's the question Nietzsche left hanging, the question we still avoid. Maybe mediocrity can't be fought directly. Maybe it dissolves only when something deeper, truth, purpose, suffering, pulls us beyond the comfort of the crowd. The next step isn't rebellion for its own sake, but the quiet courage to see clearly and still move forward. Because the real antidote to mediocrity isn't superiority, it's aliveness. And that's what the next chapter begins to uncover. Nietzsche never meant the Übermensch to be a monster of pride or domination. He meant it as a call to overcome, the quiet evolution of spirit. It wasn't about being better than others. It was about becoming more than you once were. To rise above resentment, fear, and imitation. The Übermensch is not a god. It's a possibility. The part of you that refuses to accept that comfort is the end of the story. It whispers, there's something higher you can grow into. It asks for courage, not arrogance, awareness, not perfection. Nietzsche's call wasn't to conquer the world, but to outgrow the need for its approval. The real rebellion begins when you stop waiting for permission to change. That journey begins in solitude. To become yourself, you must sometimes step back, not in bitterness, but in reverence. Being alone isn't loneliness when it's chosen with clarity. It becomes space to breathe, to hear your own thoughts without the static of the crowd. Solitude refines you. It strips away the noise until only the essential remains. You start to see what truly matters and what was only distraction. Detachment isn't arrogance, it's self-respect. It's saying, I will not dilute my inner life for comfort. When you can sit in your own silence and feel whole, you've already begun to rebel against mediocrity. But silence also brings old emotions to the surface, especially resentment. Nietzsche understood this deeply. Bitterness is what happens when we want power but feel powerless. It corrodes us from within, whispering that the world is unfair. Yet beneath every resentment is an energy that can be transformed. That anger is proof that something inside you still cares, still refuses to die. The alchemy of the higher self begins here, turning what once poisoned you into fuel. You stop blaming others for what they took and begin creating what was missing. The energy that once burned you becomes the fire that lights your path. When that fire grows, you begin to see how meaning is made, not found. The world doesn't hand you purpose, it hands you blank pages. Nietzsche's idea of freedom was terrifying because it demanded responsibility. There is no divine script to follow, no universal answer waiting to be discovered. You must invent it. That's both the burden and the beauty of existence. Meaning is a creative act. You give weight to what you love, and that love shapes reality. It's frightening at first, realizing there's no higher plan. But once you accept it, the emptiness becomes infinite space for creation. This creation requires discipline, but not the loud, performative kind. The higher self doesn't need applause. It practices the art of silent discipline, doing its work in the shadows. Every morning you choose integrity over impulse, patience over praise. You build habits that no one sees, and that invisibility becomes your strength. The world rewards visibility, but depth grows in silence. You learn to trust the invisible work, the thoughts rewritten, the emotions mastered, the temptations resisted. True strength isn't loud. It's the quiet consistency that shapes your character when no one's watching. That's where transformation truly happens. And it happens slowly. The beauty of slow growth is that it's real. Nothing permanent ever happens fast. Modern life worships acceleration, instant results, instant validation. But depth takes time. Growth that lasts is almost invisible while it's happening. It feels like nothing is changing, but beneath the surface, roots are forming. Patience becomes rebellion in a culture of speed. The higher self moves with calm defiance, trusting that slowness is not failure, it's maturity. To grow patiently is to refuse the panic of the world and instead follow the quiet rhythm of becoming. Eventually, you realize that victory over mediocrity isn't about fame or recognition. It's not about rising above others, but sinking deeper into yourself. The true victory is internal. The quiet knowing that you have remained faithful to your own potential. You no longer chase validation because your meaning no longer depends on it. Greatness isn't a spotlight, it's a depth of honesty. It's the peace that comes from living by your own principles, even when no one else notices. To overcome mediocrity is not to dominate, but to live with such integrity that mediocrity can't survive in your presence. And yet, even the strongest must return to the crowd. No one can live entirely above it. The higher self isn't meant to escape humanity, but to serve it quietly. After all, rebellion without compassion becomes arrogance. The true test of evolution is not how high you climb, but how gently you return. Greatness must walk among the ordinary without contempt. The crowd may never understand, but it still needs the light. And perhaps that's Nietzsche's final paradox, that the one who transcends the herd must still care for it. The higher self doesn't hide from the world. It enters it, carrying silence like armor and kindness like fire. The journey of overcoming always leads back to where it began. Among people, among noise, among mirrors. The difference is, this time, you're no longer lost in them. There's a strange comfort in repetition. The same roads, the same mornings, the same quiet sigh before sleep. It's as if life, in its looping rhythm, is whispering a question. What if nothing ever truly changes? Nietzsche called it the eternal return, the idea that everything we do might happen again and again for eternity. Most would find that terrifying, but perhaps there's something beautiful in it, the notion that even the average moment, the smallest decision, carries infinite weight. The way you stir your coffee, the thought you never speak, the kindness you show to no applause. If it all comes back forever, then the ordinary isn't small at all. It's eternal. Maybe that's why the world needs the ordinary. The average person, the one who keeps showing up, who works quietly, who loves without making noise, anchors humanity. Without the steady rhythm of common lives, the world would lose its shape. Greatness, after all, needs something to rise from. Even the most extraordinary mind must rest on the shoulders of countless ordinary ones. Every invention, every song, every book exists because someone else did their part with humble consistency. We look up to heroes, but it's the nameless who keep the lights on. And maybe that's enough to hold the structure of the world while others dance upon it. But hidden inside that simplicity, there's a strange kind of genius. The man who tends his garden with quiet joy understands more about purpose than many who chase glory. The woman who listens fully when no one else does has mastered an art that few can name. The genius of everyday life doesn't announce itself. It lives in attention, in presence, in the patience of doing one thing well without demanding the world's applause. It's easy to believe wisdom must roar, but often it hums in the background, disguised as routine. The truly awake see meaning not just in mountain peaks, but in folding laundry, watching the sunset, or breathing without rush. They know that peace isn't found in escaping life, it's in noticing it. And yet, even within systems built to shape and control us, there's room for freedom. Real liberation doesn't always mean breaking chains. Sometimes it means walking inside the prison with your own key. The system, whether it's society, work, or expectation, may tell us who to be. But the mind, when disciplined, quietly refuses. You can follow rules on the outside while remaining untamed within. Freedom begins when obedience stops feeling like surrender. When you act by choice, not compulsion. When your thoughts, even if unseen, belong entirely to you. It's not rebellion in the loud sense. It's a subtler kind, an internal alignment with truth that no authority can touch. That's the power of quiet rebellion. You don't have to shout to resist. You don't have to destroy to be free. Sometimes, simply staying conscious in a world of distraction is the bravest thing you can do. To think deeply in a shallow time. To feel gently in a harsh one. To stay kind when cynicism is rewarded. That's rebellion. Living with awareness is the slow revolution of our age. It doesn't trend. It doesn't sell. But it endures. Each person who lives authentically adds a small crack in the armor of conformity. And through those cracks, light always finds its way in. Eventually, all revolutions must rest. The fire has to cool. The wave must return to stillness. That's where peace lives, not in escape, but in return. The return to simplicity, to the breathing that has always been enough. When the noise of ambition fades, you begin to hear something quieter underneath, a rhythm that was there all along. Stillness isn't the absence of movement. It's movement so harmonious you stop noticing it. The heart still beats. The stars still move. The mind still drifts. But you've stopped fighting the flow. You've stopped demanding that peace must feel grand. Real peace is small. It fits in the palm of your hand, like a stone smoothed by time. To accept that stillness, though, is to confront a difficult truth. Mediocrity will always exist, and perhaps that's not a tragedy. Maybe the real victory isn't escaping it, but embracing it wisely. To accept mediocrity isn't to give up, it's to understand scale. Every life, even the quietest, plays a role in something larger. The seed doesn't envy the tree. It simply fulfills its form. We suffer when we compare, when we demand that everything mean more than it does. But what if meaning doesn't need to grow louder? What if transcendence lies not in becoming extraordinary, but in finding grace inside the ordinary? The paradox of peace is that it requires surrender to the moment, to imperfection, to the cycle that never ends. And when you finally make peace with the average, you begin to see its hidden poetry. The world ruled by the ordinary is not a prison, it's a canvas. Every quiet act becomes a brushstroke. Every small kindness, a piece of color. To live with awareness in that simplicity is to be quietly excellent. Excellence doesn't always shine. Sometimes it simply endures refined, and unshaken. Maybe that's the highest form of greatness, to walk unseen but unbroken, to leave no monument but a calm heart. Because in a world that celebrates noise, silence is radical. In a culture obsessed with being seen, choosing depth is rare. And in a time where everything changes too fast, the ones who stand still, fully awake, quietly alive, are the ones who truly endure.